Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today in the Zoho Webinar free training program. So, are you able to hear my voice and see the screen? You can do this confirmation over the Q&A, or you can give a reaction by giving a thumbs up or thumbs down icon. Thank you for the confirmation. So, as an introduction about myself, this is Balaji, who will be the speaker for today's training. And I'll be giving you an overview of complete Zoho webinar. And I'm in expertise the field of meeting and collaboration tool for the period of 6 years. So here's the agenda of today's training. So we will see an introduction to Zoho webinar and how to set up a successful webinar, followed by a few scenarios. And we will also see the setup and manage part, followed by integrations, and we will wrap up with the questions. So during the course of this training, if you have any questions, feel free to raise it in the Q&A, and we have a dedicated Q&A experts panel who will be able to answer your questions. So these are the minimum system requirements that is necessary for Zoho Webinar. Zoho Webinar is compatible with the operating systems such as Windows, Mac, and Linux. And the hardware devices that we support are through the built-in or plugged-in wireless speakers and microphone, and also to the web camera. So if at all video is required, we do support the built-in webcam or the external web camera as well. So we also have dedicated mobile applications for both Android and iOS, which can be used by the attendees to join the webinar and as well as the co-organizers to join their sessions. So why Zoho Webinar? Webinar tool, as you see with the name, it is for the engagement purposes with your audience, for live interactions, or for a big product seminars, or if you're going to do a big product launch or event. So in order to conduct this event virtually, this webinar platform sets you a pace where you can set virtual events on the go. So we do support Zoho Webinar on the browser based directly, wherein if the users are joining from the Google Chrome or Firefox or latest version of Microsoft Edge browser, it is not necessary for them to download any sort of an application, and directly it works on the browser. And the other option that I would like to say here is Zoho Webinar has the ease of access for the users to navigate to the platform, and it is self-explanatory as well, wherein the settings and other controls that we have provisioned are of easy accessible for the users in terms of small scale businesses or large enterprises. And apart from that, Zoho Webinar is absolutely safe and secure. So all the transmissions takes place through 256-bit AES encryption protocol. That is the industry standard practice that we follow in the online banking transaction and payment gateways. So that level of security and privacy has been deployed in the application. And also in terms of engaging with the audience or getting attendance reports on the number of users joined, webinar gives you a comprehensive data of the users and the interaction that you've done with them. So let's see it in action on how it works. So all you need to do is log on to meeting.zoho.com, under which you have a webinar option where we have two things. One is broadcast now, another one is schedule. So you use broadcast now in the case where you want to create an instant session in your organization. So for example, if you are hosting a town hall in your company, if you want your company employees to join the webinar on the go, you can click on the broadcast now button so that the webinar is initiated instantly, so that the join link is generated and you could share it with your internal colleagues to join this session. Or if you're planning for a scheduled webinar, you can click on the schedule button so that it'll take you to a series of scheduling process where you can first give the title of the session and a short description what the webinar is about, date, time, and duration. And if that is a recurring webinar, you can give the recurring option here and choose whether you want it to recur it daily, weekly, monthly, or a custom recurrence date. And you can also choose the registration type, whether you want your attendees to register and attend each event individually, or register once and attend any of the events. Or if you have an option to clone the webinar, wherein if you want to clone the previous webinar settings, based on the time you have given here, you'll be able to click on the webinar so that the settings applied for that webinar will be also replicated to this webinar that you're scheduling it here. So that clone webinar functionality is also available with us if at all you want to clone the webinar settings to the newly scheduled webinar. When you click on next, we have an option to add co-organizers. Co-organizer are the people who will be your internal colleagues to join the webinar while you're presenting in order to moderate the webinar, such as answering questions or launching polls. So you can add them as a co-organizer. Or if at all you are inviting an external speaker or a guest speaker to your webinar, you can also add them as a co-organizer here by giving their email ID and name so that a separate invitation is triggered to them to be a webinar co-organizer. You can add multiple co-organizer here, no limits or restrictions on that. But at point of time during the webinar, you can only have 10 people to be on the video feed. So when you click on skip and finish, the basic webinar is scheduled successfully. And upon seeing, we also have other few options to configure. Let me go one by one on based on a scenario. So the first scenario that we have is, can we identify from where the attendees register for the webinar? So we have a feature called source tracking that can be used to track the source of registration, where it is coming from. So for example, if you are promoting this webinar over Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook for that matter, you can create a source for that and have your attendees register from that source so that your users will be able to register and join to that source that you've given. And from your end, you could track from where your attendees have registered for the session. So you can click on add source available here and give the title as Twitter. And once you've added the source, automatically a special link will be generated. So you could copy this link from here, and when you give it to the users for the registration process, so once a user registers for the webinar, the visitor count and the registrant count will be increasing here. So by this means, you'll be able to isolate the number of users who have come from Twitter or like webinar from LinkedIn promotion or from any social media sites for that matter. You could create different sources and track from where they are coming from. If at all you have a page for that, you could also use this embed code, either the iframe code or the source code, and have it embedded onto your site so that users registering from that specific media can also be tracked here. So the next scenario that we have is, where can I customize the emails sent to my attendees? So we have an email customization option from where you'll be able to customize the registration confirmation emails sent to the attendees and also the reminder mails followed by the thank you mails. So all these emails have a default template. If at all you want to use the default template, you can use it. And if you want to edit the template and add your own content, you could click on this edit button and choose to completely edit your webinar template. So as you see, we have certain edited templates here that you could click on this option and include your text or any images or image plus text, or complete formatting option can be done here using the email template option that we have. So this in-depth email template customization will help you to completely redraft the whole content according to your needs, and also include your banners or images, for example, and use it for your webinar sessions. If at all you also want to see the preview on how it looks like, you can see the preview of the edited template. And if at all you want to send a test email, you could also send a test email so that you will be able to see how the webinar template that you've edited looks like. Or even you can do a test registration to ensure everything is in the pace. Once everything is completed, you can click on the save button to save your webinar template. Or if at all you have an HTML, you can also insert an HTML here and use it for your sessions. And we do also have different options of creating a webinar template from the scratch or multiple formatting options. This is how you will be able to completely customize the email template, starting from the registration confirmation email sent, or sending multiple reminders or thank you mails. So under reminder mails, we also have an option to trigger up to 3 different reminders, each reminder up to 1 week before, or 1 day before or 12 hours before, you can choose the any number of timestamp available here and use it to send the reminders. So the next scenario that we have is, will I be able to include the webinar recording in the follow-up emails? So as you saw in the email customization section, so we do send the follow-up email to the attendees, or the thank you mail and also the absentee mail to the follow-up section, wherein the attendees who registered and attended the webinar will receive the thank you mail, and the users who missed to attend the webinar but they registered for the session will receive the follow-up email. So you can click on the settings button here and give the timestamp on after how many hours or minutes the webinar email should be sent to them. And if you want to include the recording of the webinar, you can click on this include recording button and save it, so that users will receive the thank you mail along with the recording link after the number of timestamp if given there. The next scenario that we have is, how can I customize the webinar registration form? So in Zoho Webinar, so we have two options. One is doing a webinar with registration or without registration. If you're doing a webinar with registration, we have a registration form that contains the first name, last name, and the email address to be the default field. If at all you want to add more options to it on top of these three fields, you could click on the Manage Fields button and add the terms and conditions, the organization, the number of employees, city, job title, phone number, etc. as a predefined fields that we have. Or if at all you want to add a custom field like a multiple choice or short answer or checkbox, you could add that and as well as save it, so that users will see those fields when they access the registration form and fill in those information and get registered for the webinar, as well as they'll receive the join link post registration. So we also have an option where you can moderate the registration, wherein you can choose whether it needs to be automatically approved by the users or it needs to be manually approved. When it is chosen to be automatic, when a webinar attendee registers for the session, the webinar is automatically approved, which means post the webinar registration, they'll receive the confirmation email of the registration with the join link. So for example, if you're choosing it to be manual, upon each and every registration, you'll be receiving an approval process. You'll be going through an approval process where the organizer of the webinar has to manually approve the registrations. So only upon the approval, they'll be able to get the join link. So this can be used as a workaround for payments that you're going to get for the webinar. If you're running a paid webinar, if you want them to get paid for the sessions, if you're going to receive payments, and only upon receiving the payment, you had to approve the registration, you could choose it to be manual. So that once a webinar attendee registers for the session, and once you verify if the payment has been made, you can choose it to be the option to approve the registration, so that they'll receive the registration confirmation mail upon your approval. So this way, the moderation can be used in terms of automatic and manual. And if at all you're going to do a webinar without registration, simply anyone with the link can join the session. Or if at all you need an authentication over it, so users is joining from a specific domain alone will be able to attend your session. So for example, if your company name is Zilker, and if your company employees who are registering from at zilker.com domain will be able to join the sessions directly. So that makes the difference between with registration and without registration. And on top of that, if we have a predefined registration data, you can click on the import CSV button and attach the CSV details that has the registration information of the attendees who have their email, first name and last name. You can upload the registration option here and send the confirmation email after import, so that users will receive the registration confirmation email after you've imported the file. So this can be done on behalf of the users. If you don't want to get them registered, you can register on behalf of them if you have the CSV document containing their email ID and first name and last name. Scenario that we have is, Can we set up additional restrictions for email registrations? So we did see how registration process works, wherein users can register for the webinar with registration or without registration. When you click on advanced settings, we have a couple of options here where you can configure the registration limit for your webinar. So you can, as an organizer of the session, you can decide how many registrations you want to get for the session based on the plan that you've purchased for the webinar. So for example, if you have purchased for 50 attendee plan or 100 attendee plan for the webinar, but you've got more than 100 registrations or more than 500 registrations, so only based on the plan you've purchased, that many attendees can be allowed into the session. So in order to decide that limits of registration, you can configure the numbers here so that those many attendees alone will be able to register for the session. So next we have is an option to allow only business email address. So if you only want to allow business email IDs and ignore public domains such as Gmail, Yahoo, and AOL, that can be restricted here. And if at all you want to allow registration only with an authorized domain, you can also enable that setting so that users registering from the authorized domain alone will be able to register for the webinar. If you also have an option to allow access to join link through email, allow or deny registrations from specific countries, and as well as allow only authenticated Zoho user to register for the session. So these are all some of the advanced settings that you can configure during your webinar. So the next scenario that we have is how to let the attendees raise questions anonymously. So under preferences, we have an option to for the attendees to ask questions. If at all they have asked the questions, if you want them to raise questions anonymously, you could enable allow anonymous questions as well. On top of that, we also have an option to show questions to all. When you enable show questions to all, by default, when an attendee asks a question, that question will be posted publicly to the people so that if any other attendee knows the answer, they could answer it so that it becomes more like a discussion in the session. And if at all you want to answer it publicly or privately, that can also be done in the webinar. We do also have automatic session recording so that it helps the users to record the webinar automatically. And we also have video recording option to record the video along with the audio and screen sharing. We also have an option called display attendee list all. When you enable the setting, one attendee will know the names of the other attendees who have joined in the session. We also have emoji reactions that you can enable it here so that users can react in the webinar by giving a thumbs up or thumbs down icon to express their feelings or ideas in the session. So on top of that, under engagement section, we have an option called session files. So this session files differs from the regular screen sharing you are doing. So what you do in a regular screen sharing is you will be sharing your screen, either your entire screen or an application window or a browser tab, and you'll be forced to share your screen to share the presentation. But in this case of session files, it is not necessary for you to share your screen to share the presentation. So if you have a PPT document, if you have a PDF document, you can click on the attach file section and attach those PPT and PDF files. And on top of that, we also have a provision to import an video file as well. So if you have an MP4 video file, that MP4 video file can also be uploaded here so that during the webinar, you can play a pre-recorded video as well. If at all you wanted to play a pre-recorded video, the pre-recorded video can also be played using the video file that you've uploaded here. And during the webinar, you can start the webinar directly and broadcast the presentation material. So it is not necessary for you to share your screen to share the presentation. And all the files that you're uploading here should be within the file size of 1 GB. So if that criteria satisfies, you could upload PPT files, PDF files, and MP4 video files here. And during the webinar, directly broadcast it without sharing your screen. And if at all you're using Zoho WorkDrive, from Zoho WorkDrive, you'll be able to attach few files as well directly. So we also have an option to add polls. So we have 3 different polls available to launch. Either if you want to launch a single choice poll or a multiple choice poll or a star rating poll, you can decide that and launch it accordingly. So for example, I'm giving an option here, test. So one being the answer and two will be another option. When you are adding this poll will be created, and during the webinar, either the organizer can launch the poll or the co-organizer can launch the poll. So the next scenario that we have is how to conclude a webinar in the best way. So we have a feature called post-webinar redirection, which will help your attendees to get redirected to a specific web page. For example, I'm giving a URL here as zoho.com/webinar. And if I'm saving this, once an attendee exits the webinar or when they leave the webinar, automatically they are redirected to the specific website. So for you, in the case, it may be your website page or blogs page or any promotional sites. Or if you want your attendees to get a feedback, it may be a post attendee survey link as well. So any link for that matter, you could upload it here so that users will be directly getting redirected to the specific web page that I've given here. So that's how the post webinar redirection will work. So once all the options that we discussed are customized, you could click on the start button to start the webinar directly. So before that, we'll see how the registration form looks like. So I've copied the link from here. And when I paste a registration link here, where attendees will take part of the registration process, they'll be able to give their first name, last name, and their email ID and choose to register for the webinar. So if the webinar is happening on multiple occurrences, users will see an option to choose the webinar that they want to choose to register, and they can register for that specific webinar alone. And if at all users want to see the webinar in their own time zone, they could choose to select their time zone and see the webinar that is happening in their time. And they can click on the register button to register for the session. So once they register for the webinar, they'll be taken to the post registration page from where they'll have options to add to different calendars. Say we support Zoho Calendar, Google Calendar, Outlook, Yahoo, or if at all they want to download the ICS file and import the event reminders or calendars to their personal calendars, that is also possible. Or if they want to copy the link, they can also copy the link and save it somewhere for them to get access to the webinar. So once done, if we click on the start button, automatically the webinar will be initiated on the browser as I mentioned. If you are launching this webinar from Google Chrome, Firefox, and latest version of Microsoft Edge browser, by default, users will be able to proceed into the webinar. And if the attendees are joining from Google Chrome, Firefox, or Microsoft Edge or Safari browsers, attendees can directly join the webinar over this browser itself. But if they're joining from the mobile, they need a Zoho Webinar mobile application installed on their Android and iOS devices to join the session. So as we see, this is the organizer window and this is the attendee window. When attendees join the webinar, by default, they'll be joining the webinar in listen-only mode. They don't have direct access to their mic and speaker, and they'll only be able to raise questions from the Q&A and take part in the polls, etc. But as an organizer and the co-organizer of the webinar, we'll be able to control the complete session as it is happening. And in the attendee tab, you'll be able to see who is the organizer and who is the attendees joined. And we have an option to sort their name in terms of ascending or descending order, and as well as filter by the users who have raised their hand and as well as who have allowed to talk. So coming next, we have the chat option. Using this chat option, we have the privilege to chat between the organizer and co-organizer to ensure if everything is in place, if they are able to hear the audio, if they're able to see the screen sharing, or you can discuss within among yourselves. If at all you want to share a PPT file or a PDF file, you can upload the files here and keep it ready if you're doing a screen sharing. You can download the file and you can again do a screen sharing here, or upload it to the share material beforehand and use it to share it in your session. And you can also record audio messages in this chat and also use the option to react using the emojis. Next we have is the Q&A, which will let you to broadcast messages during the webinar. Say, for example, I'm entering this message, welcome all. This message will be posted to all the attendees in this Q&A section. And if at all, if an attendee wants to ask a question, they can ask a question from here, which can be asked anonymously, or they can ask it publicly. When a question is asked with their name, automatically the question will be posted in the Q&A section of the organizer and co-organizer. And if they want to answer the question either publicly or privately, they can decide it. Or if at all they want to set priority to the question, they can set priority to this question. Or if they want to assign a staff, they can assign staffs as well. Or if you also want to project this question to the attendees, you can also project the question so that this question that is being posted here will also be visible to the attendees over their screen, and you can read the question aloud and answer them as well. That becomes a live answer. Or if at all you want to answer it here, you can answer it here as well. So anything is possible. Or if you want to stop projecting, you can stop projecting as well. So that's how the Q&A can be interactively taken clear, wherein you can answer the question either publicly or privately, or answering it live, or you can project it and answer them. And next we have the poll that can be used to launch a poll. When you want to start the poll, automatically the poll will be launched on the attendee window, and they can take part in the survey and submit the results. So once the results are submitted, on the organizer window, you'll be able to see the most voted answer. And if at all you want to publish the result to the people, you can publish it so that users will be able to see the most voted answer here. And you can also hide results and click on back to list so that you can launch the other polls that you've created. So that's how the polls work. And at the bottom, you will see the complete control toolbar, wherein you'll be able to see the session duration. You can unmute your audio video. You can do screen sharing, as I told you. You could share your Chrome tab or window or entire screen. Or if at all you want to share a specific material, you could click on share files and pick the file that you wanted to share and choose to attach it from the library and share it immediately without sharing your screen. So this is how share material works, wherein if you want to share the presentation alone. If you want to pause the sharing, you can pause the sharing. If you want to resume the sharing, you can resume the sharing as well, so that users will be able to see it on their screen. So if you want to zoom in, you can also zoom in, and as well as switch between the slides. So that's how it will work for the users. So next we have is the option to react. So using the reactions, you'll be able to express your ideas during the webinar. Both attendees and co-organizers or organizer, if they want to react in the webinar, they can click on the reactions button to react. So we also have more options where you can start recording. So once the recording has been initiated, so you'll be able to see the recording in progress message. And if at all you want to pause the recording and resume the recording to record only a bit of portion that you require. And if at all you want to stop the recording, you can also stop the recording completely. And we do have an option to enter full screen, picture in picture, and as well as option to change layouts from tile view and sidebar view. Under settings, we have an option to change the audio mode from computer's audio to phone audio. So we offer dial-in numbers for over 30 plus countries and toll-free numbers for over 25 plus countries that can be used, wherein you can choose a country here and get the access code PIN number and dial in through the webinar using the phone numbers available. And we have audio option where you can choose to choose this webcam that you have, any internal webcam or external webcam. And we do have virtual background that helps you to choose the custom background available here. Or if at all you want to blur the background, that can also be done. Or if at all you want to upload a custom image, you can also upload a custom image and get it reflected on your screen. That's how the virtual background will work when you want to use it for your sessions. And these are the preferences that are available that you can configure during the webinar. So that in terms of audio, in terms of video and Q&A and general settings. Under network performance, we have the option where you will be able to see the packet loss that has happened or the advanced settings that happens when the bandwidth optimization is taken place. So when we detect network fluctuation, automatically based on the network that the user has, the bandwidth optimization will take place accordingly, through which you'll be able to analyze or see how the webinar is running through. Either it is packet loss is sent or received, everything will be available here for you to completely diagnose. So we'll see the last scenario. How do we live stream the webinar over social media? So we have YouTube live streaming that can be enabled from these more options. When you click on live on YouTube, automatically you'll be authorizing your Google accounts. If you have the accounts page for, your YouTube page for a company, and once you continue, automatically you'll be able to get into the YouTube live streaming page. From where it will prompt you to enter the title, what it needs to be shown on the YouTube page, and the video accessibility needs to be public or unlisted or private. And once you choose the mode and choose to go live, automatically the webinar will be broadcasted over YouTube. So that even though if you have exhausted the user attendee list in the webinar, you could share this YouTube link to other attendees over the globe, or your YouTube subscribers can directly access this YouTube link and get benefit out of the webinar. So you can come here and see that they are live on YouTube. You could copy this link directly and you could give them the link to share on YouTube and view their session. If at all you want to stop live streaming, you can stop live streaming as well. So that is how YouTube live streaming will work if you want to test YouTube live streaming and you want to go live on YouTube. So coming back to the attendee window, when attendee raises the hand, so we have an option under organizer screen where a filter will be created, and that filter will let you know who have raised their hand. And if at all you feel, if you want to allow them to talk with mic access, you can choose them to allow to talk with mic access. Or if at all they want to talk with video, you can talk with video. And if you want to make them as a presenter to showcase the presentation, you can make them as a presenter. Or if at all you want to promote them as a co-organizer, we also have an option to promote them as a co-organizer here. And if you want to remove them from the session, we also have a provision to remove attendee. So these are all some of the attendee engagement options that we have that you can use it to engage with your known people. And once done, you can revoke their hand and clear the filter. So that's how the attendee engagement works in terms of raising hand and if you want to give them the option to talk. So when I click on exit as an attendee, based on the preference that has been configured by the webinar organizer, I'll be leaving the webinar and get redirected to the specific web page that I've configured with. So this is how the post-webinar redirection works when you want directing your attendees to a specific web page. And similarly, so when I'm clicking on the exit button to end the webinar, so I'll also be able to get access to the complete list of recordings and the detailed reports. Under analytics section, under webinar, you'll be able to fetch the detailed report of the registrations who registered for the webinar, the attendee report on who all attended your session, at what time they joined, for how much duration they were present, whether they responded to your poll or not, whether they asked questions or not. You'll be able to completely generate a report based on a CSV file or an Excel file format for the attendee report, registrations report, polls, Q&A, and overall performance report. This can be used for you in terms of the internal auditing purpose or post-webinar engagement purposes for marketing, and use it to your session attendees. So you can drill down reports in terms of specific organizer, or if you want to completely fetch the reports for your org admin. As an org admin, you'll be able to see in terms of session duration or session history, or in terms of the number of duration that we have up to last 365 days. That's how you'll be able to export the reports of the complete webinar in terms of count, duration, and history from the analytics. When you click on files, under recordings, you'll be able to fetch the complete recordings for the webinar. So when you click on share, you'll be able to share the recordings within your organization, or anyone with the link can access the recording, or do not share. And even though you're doing all these three options, if you want to restrict the users from downloading the recording to their local machine, you can also restrict the users to download the recording. So we have an option to play, download, or view the transcript or delete the recording as well. So under Files tab, you'll be able to manage the complete files that you have uploaded here. So in order to share your presentation in the webinar, so you need to upload the files beforehand. So when you click on upload, it will prompt you to upload the files from your computer, either a PPT, PDF, or a video file. And if the file size is within 1 GB, you can upload the material here, and during the webinar, you can broadcast it by picking up the file from the library that is seen. So that's how the recording and files would work. So next we will see about the mobile app. So we did see how you can conduct meetings, the webinars from your website. So we do have dedicated iOS and Android application that helps you to create, launch webinars from your mobile app, and as well as co-organizers to join the webinar and attendees to join. So both iOS and Android app are available that you can use it to download the application and join. Next, we'll go to setup and manage. First, we will discuss the initial settings. So when you click on settings under personal, we have an option to change your local information. Zoho Meeting is supported with 22 plus different languages, and such as English, Chinese, French, German, Spanish, Indonesian, Portuguese, Italian, and regional languages of India. That you can choose it here. We have Arabic support, and as well as the Urdu and other languages as well, as you see. And we also have an option to configure the general settings that are for the individual users of the account, if they want to receive notifications or if they want to view the immediate users. So all these complete settings can be configured by the webinar organizer with their individual settings. And in terms of recording, they can also decide whether they want to automatically record all the sessions in webinars and as well as the transcriptions. So coming next, we have certain organization level settings where the administrators of the org can configure. So in terms of co-branding, so you'll be able to upload your company name, logo, and also change your company's name so that the logo and names will reflect on the email invitations that is sent to the webinar attendees. And as well as in the registration form and within the product, you'll be able to see the logo and the branding that you've done. And in general settings, we have camera sharing, option to extend the session timeout, and all other webinar related settings here. If you want to notify the users on registration, follow-up emails. So we also have practice sessions as well. When you enable practice sessions, what happens is when you are in the webinar, you will by default be in a practice mode wherein you can discuss within your co-organizer. So only when you start broadcast, you'll be live in the session and have your attendees see you and listen to you. That's how the practice webinar works. It's a practice mode. And we have custom domain as well. So instead of using meeting.zoho.com or webinar.zoho.com, you could choose to use your own custom domain. It is not necessarily that needs to be meeting.zoho.com. It can be meeting.yourcompanyname.com. So for example, if your company name is Zilker, it can be meeting.zilker.com. So for this, you had to map the CNAME with the Zoho Meetings host name. And once that is done, you need to verify the ownership and raise it for SSL certification. Once your domain is certified with SSL, you'll be able to use it to access your software. On top of that, we have also the user management that we will see now. So under users, you'll be able to manage the licenses that you purchased for the account. So based on the license that you purchased, you can assign licenses to your people and also add users here and give them the app access, whether they want access to meeting or webinar, or whether they want to be an administrator or a standard member. You can decide all those and give them the access to the software. And if not, you want to add multiple users, you can add email address separated by a comma and give them the role, admin or a member, and give them the app access. We also have departments that will let you create multiple departments within your organization. Say, for example, if you have marketing, finance, or HR departments in your company, and if they want to do a webinar within their organization, you could click on Add Department here and manage the complete department. You can give a department name and a short description and add it. So that users will be able to completely get added to the session. So once you add a department, You can also associate users to this department, so that as a department admin, you'll be able to manage your own users and have your own reports and recordings, etc. So coming next, we have is the email configuration. So when you click on settings, under email settings, we have an option to configure the sender address and the reply to address for webinar. So we have an option to configure the reply to email addresses and as well as the from address, whether it needs to be sent from no reply or organized email address, or if it is a custom email ID, you can also use it to reply for the email addresses when attendees reply for your emails. Or for the from address, it needs to be sent from your own support email ID or a group email alias. And on top of that, we also have email management that you can configure to add emails that will let you give the email address name and who can use this email ID, whether an admin or a member to use it for their sessions, for the reply to. And since your webinar, when your domain is not verified, we have chances of getting the emails landed to spam. So in order to get it to the inbox, it is advisable that you verify your domain so that the domain management can be done here, post which you'll be able to directly send the mailers to their inbox, attendees when they register. So this domain management can be added here based upon the preference. So next we have is the security and privacy, under which you'll be able to configure the option to automatically anonymize the data based on the timestamp that is given and applied. Automatically the data that is stored in Zoho Meeting will be erased or anonymized. And we also have an option to view the action log viewer that will let you see the changes that has been made by your attendees on your account. So each and every change will be captured here that can be downloaded as a CSV file. Or if at all you want to filter it based on the category, you can apply a filter and get access to the complete audit logs for your internal auditing purpose. On top of that, we also have the data cleanup option where you can configure whether you want to erase the session reports and recordings older than some period of months or never clean up the session reports. We do have an option to clear the action logs viewer of the data older than 12 months or 72 months or 36 months. You can give the timestamp here for the periodic data cleanup process. So by the bottom, the subscription tab will let you see what all subscription you have opted for and what is the payment mode and when is the next payment, and if at all you have opted for any add-ons. So you can click on the manage subscription here and choose to upgrade or downgrade your licenses and make your payments. So on top right corner, we have the desktop application for Zoho Meeting and dedicated iOS and Android app, and also Chrome and Edge extension. Apart from that, we have certain Outlook plugin as well for meeting. So these are some of the integrations that we offer for Zoho Webinar. So Zoho Webinar is integrated with Zoho Backstage for event management. We have for Zoho Automation with marketing automation. We have with Zoho Flow. We have with Zoho integration with Zia for generating your keynotes and summary. And we have with Zoho CRM for pushing your leads and contacts in the Zoho CRM with the registrations you've got. We have with Zoho Calendar to sync your events to Zoho Calendar, and as well with Zoho Campaigns. So you can come to meeting.zoho.com and under settings, apps, you'll be able to completely configure the integration that we have. So with Zoho CRM integration, as you can see, you can go to crm.zoho.com, under which you'll be able to see the campaigns module. So under campaigns module, you'll be able to click on the option, give a title of the campaign, choose the type to be the webinar, and choose the start date when it's going to happen, and choose to save the session. So once you save, you'll be able to see what this is about and how the webinar has been created. All the links will be generated from where you'll be able to add this to your webinar. So once the webinar is ended, you'll be able to completely get to know how the webinar has been done. All the reports, dashboards, analytics, poll reports, everything will be available within your CRM database. So for this to happen, first you have to click on the settings under CRM. And from Zoho, you should be able to click on the Zoho webinar to completely install the integration. So when you click on manage, you'll be able to see whether you want to push the registered participants in Zoho webinar as a lead or a contact. So you can decide whether you want to push the Zoho webinar registrations as a lead or a contact in Zoho CRM and sync it based upon your preference. Or if you also want to update the member status when service status is invited, you want to sync it as invited or sent or received, you can choose it from here and configure it so that the webinar is configured in the campaigns module. So if at all you have Zoho campaigns, you can also click on the Zoho campaigns here and associate a webinar to Zoho campaigns. So when you click on this webinar and click on Zoho campaigns here under promote option, you'll be redirected to Zoho campaigns module, from where you'll be able to associate the webinar that you've created and send them the mailers. So as you see under webinars, you can choose the webinar here under test and automatically give a campaign name, subject of the email, and assign topic, and as well as configure the sender address and choose to go next so that you can configure the HTML presentation as a template and push the email registrations with the list you have. So that's how the campaign integration work with Zoho Webinar as well, apart from Zoho CRM. So on top of these integrations, we have the necessary APIs available that you could use it to click on the API documentation to view how we can integrate Zoho Webinar within your software. So first you need to click on authentication to authenticate the application by registering your application for Zoho API console. Once that is done, you can get user details of the user that you have in your account, and you can click on the manage button to under webinar to create, list, edit, get webinar or delete webinar. If at all you want to have an option to bulk registration, you can also use it via API, or within the application UI, you can also choose to import CSV. Either from the UI you can do it, or from the APIs you can do using the bulk registration option. That's how the integration will work. And these are the features that we are working on in the pipeline. So we're working on landing page customization. So as of now, we don't support Zoho Webinar registration landing page customization. We're working on that. And we are working on on-demand webinar and as well as payment integration. So these will be the priority tasks that we have planned for this year quarter. And we'll be finishing it off soon, and you'll be seeing it in the software. So if at all you have further questions, you can raise it in the Q&A, and we have the Q&A people to answer your questions. So we have certain frequently asked questions by the webinar attendees. We'll discuss this as well. The first one that we have is, will I be able to join the webinar as a co-organizer? So we have support for both iOS and Android applications for Zoho Webinar that can be used to join the session. So we also have a limit on free plan and participant count. Yes, up to 60 minutes of webinar can be hosted with up to 100 attendees. With basic feature access, you'll not be able to get recordings or any of the paid features that we discussed today in the training, and only with limited feature access for webinar. So how many attendees do we support in webinar? We support up to 5,000 attendees in the webinar solution. The basic plan starts with 25 attendees, and we scale the webinar up to 5,000. So we have two editions in it, namely standard edition, professional edition. So each edition differs based on the number of features we offer that you can pick it up here. And finally, how secure is Zoho Webinar? So as I told you in the start of the session, Zoho Webinar is absolutely safe and secure. And all the transmission takes place through 256-bit AES encryption protocol. That is the industry standard practice that we follow in the online banking and payment transactions. So spread the word, use the hashtag Zoho Meeting and Zoho Webinar to share experience on how the webinar went. So I'll be launching you a survey, and you can rate me on 1 to 5, 5 being the best, and let me know how the webinar went today. Thank you for joining us, and have a great day. Bye-bye.